Okay. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest. If at some, oh, sorry, I do have one. I saw you looking at me there, Councillor Watson. Councillor Watson, for under new business, section 5.2, library services report, page 3, closed session. I can't read what you've got there. Is it
Natmar.
Natmar Properties, business relationship. So there's that one. And if at some point throughout the meeting you find that you do, please declare it at that time. Presentations, deputations, public meetings, we have none. Unfinished business, we have none. New business, we do have 3 items on the agenda today, and we're going to have the public presentation for all 3, and then we will be moving in camera to discuss in-camera items, and then our motions will be read out after the enclosed session, just so we're clear on that. So the first one is the special events coordinator dealing with the motorcycle rally. Chris, did you want to join us? Oh, and Dan, sorry, I didn't see you there.
That's what I was looking.
I didn't see you there. You're hiding.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, just in addition to my report, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. So the organizer has indicated that the 2019 event he is likely going to cancel if he doesn't find a purchaser to the event. It is currently our largest event in the town. And of course, if we were to purchase it, the staff would undertake a thorough analysis of the event and how we would run it if we were to continue on with it.
So you don't, with the staff you have today, would it be possible to run an event like this?
It would, I think we would be able to handle it, but it would be very time consuming. It would be an added feature to our event, so it would definitely take a lot of work, and we'd have to focus with some staff on it.
Okay, and we do have items in camera on this item, but is there anything that committee can ask from the public pieces here now that you wanted answered? Councillor Kenny?
Through you, Madam Chair, just to re-qualify that if we do walk down that road about it, and from a personal point of view, I love the event. But that being said, I don't want to have our staff running around and not being able to handle it, so I definitely listen to you, Angela, and if you say you can do it, then you can do it. But that being said, I think the council, depending on how we package things up in the closed meeting, we're always open to suggestions on how to make things work better.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Bray?
Thank you. For me, absolutely great event. I think if the town is going to take it over and it's going to become our signature event, we just have to think kind of long and hard around the table if the motorcycle rally is what we want to become our signature event. I know Collingwood has Elvis, Midland has the Butter Tart Festival. Do we want to be the motorcycle festival? So it's a great event for our town, but do we want it to be what we're known for?
Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, looking at this and staying on just the public item, we talk about this being the 5th motorcycle rally in Wasaga Beach. And technically it isn't. There were several that were run previously by a business in town for several years prior to that. So my thought and concern, and I think it's similar to what Councillor Kinney said, is I want to give some thought as to how, because we've had 2 different people who've run motorcycle rallies here. One was far more successful than the other. So is that the catalyst, or like I'm concerned that if we were to say purchase the event and the promoter goes on to something else, that it was that individual or his team that were able to put it together, as opposed to putting all the pressure on staff to do that. So is the motorcycle rally itself got its own life, or is it that promoter who was able to create a life? And that's, we'll debate that more, I think, in camera, but I do think that's a thing to consider, because there has been a motorcycle rally here for probably a decade. 5 of them have been exceptional, and the other ones were good, but not on the same scale, so.
Okay. Councillor Belanger?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just from, many residents that have talked about it, and there's mixed feeling in business, but I think there's a little bit of a nostalgia to this event for Wasaga Beach as well. As the riders have aged, we've really gone without any major incidents for the last 5 years, to my knowledge. It's been a pretty exciting event, and I would be one to say that we need to continue it on in some way, and I think we'll be looking at some options that one of them might be very viable. So.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Wells.
Yeah, I have some comments around some of the part that's part of the private session part, but being an active and avid motorcyclist myself, and having attended numerous rallies, both up here and in the States, and this one here locally as well, I'm all for the rally, and I'm extremely supportive of the rally being here in Wasaga Beach. It was a fantastic event for residents, the motorcyclists, the community, everything else. And as somebody pointed out, I'm not aware that there were any significant incidents. There was a couple of complaints occasionally about some of the, shall we say, that the gang type wearing colors. That's something you have to always keep in mind. But I'm not aware that it created any real incidents. I guess where I struggle is in looking at what is the council's core business. This is a major event that is an event that requires some significant promotional background. It's the kind of event that professional promoters would normally run and operate. And much as I have every respect for our staff, for Angela and so forth and staff, the town is not a quote professional promoter, and it's not part of the core business of the town to be professional promoters of events and activities. So yes, we do manage the events, the Canada Day. I think there's something like 18 events that are managed by the town, but it's Canada Day. You deal with a promoter, another promoter to get a band. You deal with promoters to get other things happening. We are not the actual promoters of that. We are simply collecting the elements that we need for those other events. We collect the elements we need through other promoters, through other professionals. And this, in my mind, requires, again, professional promotion, and I just don't see it as our core business. And I don't know that with no offense to staff, that there's a certain level of expertise that goes along with this kind of an operation. So I haven't made a final decision in my own mind yet. There are some issues I need to be clear on as we go through the second part of it, but I am really having some difficulty seeing us. I would be more in tune to say, let's be saying to using our resources to find other professional promoters who might be willing and interesting to take it on, and putting the current operator in touch with those people and trying to facilitate an agreement, or facilitate a transition from one promoter to another promoter, and using our resources to do that. But that's just my thoughts at the moment.
Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's one concern I would have. I understand he's been trying to sell this event with no luck to this point, so that's a bit of a concern to me. It's also mentioned here about the purchasing the event and the brand name. Would that be part of the proposal that's here? The brand name is coming with it also?
Yeah, so the name Wasaga Beach Motorcycle Rally is trademarked.
Right.
So it would be purchasing that trademark.
So we'd be buying that also, okay. The other concern, I understand that the reason why he doesn't want to do it is because he's doing that huge event, Roxodus, out at Edenvale, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so if that event is a one-off, I'd be concerned about a non-compete clause that next year he could come back and start his own motorcycle rally somewhere else. That'd have to be addressed, I think, somewhere along there. That event's already having some issues now with Clearview, I understand. I've seen it in the paper about they're worried about traffic and the other number of things with that event. And has the OPP been consulted at all with this, their involvement in the past and going forward if we were handling it? Any strain on that or any extra costs involved for us?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is, we haven't had the conversation with the OPP yet. They are always involved in all of our event processes, so they have been very involved in the past, and we would expect them to be very involved in the future. I do have in the budget estimate there some costing that would be additional OPP for traffic management.
Okay. Again, we will be discussing this in camera. I've thoroughly enjoyed the event. I think it's fantastic, but we do have some other matters to discuss. So if there's no other questions at this point. Oh, sorry, George.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in your report, Angela, you mentioned about that staff reached out to the 4 beachfront bar owners. Could you elaborate for committee in terms of what the response was from the owners?
Through you, Madam Chair. So they were all in favor of the event in a way, definitely partnering with the town or having aspects of the event occur. Some were more enthusiastic than others, but they all basically have said that they can see some benefit. There's one who's a little bit more cautious with involvement. They want to make sure that there's other aspects of the event that, like promotion-wise and the attendees, that it's actually profitable for them as well. But we did have discussions about them supporting the event by perhaps sponsoring like a main stage act, so they'd be a sponsor of the actual main stage, and then we could potentially work with them on having a bar or a band go back to their establishments after we close down our event. They could still have some sort of entertainment in their establishments that kind of ties to the event. So there was definitely some interest in that, but none of them had given us a commitment by any means.
And again, I see those negotiations are between those private interests and the person who owns it now. The town can talk after the fact, I think, as to what we can assist with, but I think those initial discussions is not something that the town should be in the middle of, staff anyways. Okay.
Just a question, and you may need to get rid of the legal side of it as well, which would be in camera, but yes, we know the logo is trademarked, we know the name is trademarked, it's been registered, or whatever the legal terminology is. If the town was not to be willing to engage in the sense of purchasing the event, what restrictions would be involved in any other independent promotion company or whatever from holding a motorcycle event in town, totally unrelated to this particular company, corporation, say, maybe getting into some legal area, I don't know, or even the town itself independently having a weekend motorcycle, come to the beach kind of event without having to go through this process. I don't believe that because this event has its trademark, etc., that it is therefore the only motorcycle event that could occur in town, that someone else can't come and have a second event or an only event if this one doesn't happen or whatever. I don't believe it's mutually restrictive unless I'm missing something.
I don't believe we have any clause anywhere that says that if they pull out, that we as a town couldn't allow another motorcycle rally to happen.
Not through our agreement, no, we don't have a non-compete clause with that. There is some issues regarding the naming, I believe.
But if the town chose to say, we're not maybe interested in this, but we want to rename it, call it something else, we could hold a motorcycle rally. Or another group could come in and call it something else.
defer to you
Chris.
first.
Certainly, Your Worship. It's a good question, and we've definitely tabled it a number of times. We have clarified with the town's solicitor, and council says that there would be a number of cautions and parameters around the simplicity of just renaming the event to something that didn't rhyme with the trademark idea. That being said, we haven't fully explored. I think we're waiting for direction from council to say, buy it, don't buy it, negotiate further, etc. And then we'll start to investigate with legal fees involved. Of course, there will be costs.
Okay, and I think if that's the case, then I think moving forward, we need to be very careful of events that we approve that would somehow tie our hands in the future. You know, if somebody comes in and says, I'm calling it this, and that's going to prevent the town down the road from throwing a specific event, that would be a problem. So, do you know what I'm saying?
I do understand, and I think that the initial advice from our solicitor was that we would not be able to do that easily. So I think that would be a good starting point, and we can investigate the exact details behind that for specifics if need be. If it turns out that there's no way that the event will be purchased by us or another party.
Okay, we're going to do 2 more questions because we're going to then go in camera and we're going to do this all again. So Councillor Watson and then Councillor Belanger, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Worship. Unless I miss it, I don't need the amount if there is one. When you say purchase the event, is there a dollar figure?
That's in your in-camera package, I believe.
Yeah, okay, so that's going to be a total separate item, because I guess I was thinking that if we did, is there any obligation that we run the event right away? We own the naming rights, and would that allow us to then call it the Saga Beach something else if somebody else wanted to do it? Motorcycle extravaganza weekend or something.
Councillor
Yeah,
Belanger?
thank you, Your Worship. Again, I think when we go in camera, there's lots of things we could explore. Through the conversation and the material so far, I'm not sure if this is an anomaly that this year is a challenge for the organizer versus being disinterested forever. But all I'm saying is there might be an opportunity to, at a lower cost, to have the use of the logo and everything for this year, and then look at what happens down the road. Just a thought.
Okay, so we're going to leave this item, and after we cover in camera discussion, then we'll have something after that. Next is dealing with the library. Pam, if you wanted to join us at the table.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Your Worship. Our report, of course, comes in 2 segments, the public segment as well as the private segment. I think that we've done some good homework to try and locate the best sites for the potential new library. It's surprising the amount of land that isn't available, so let me reiterate that I went through every vacant lot along an arterial road to measure it out to see if there is an opportunity. So I think what we brought to you today is the best of the best, as far as I know, that's available for our library. And I welcome any questions that you have about what we selected.
Okay, so in the public portion, there is a couple of properties there. If there's questions now of Pam, this would be the time. If not, we will have further discussions in camera about privately owned properties.
There's a presentation. Are we seeing that or no?
Did you want to go through your presentation?
No, it's just an opportunity if we discuss and you want to see something that it's all the selected sites, so that if we want to discuss them, they are available online.
Okay. Councillor Belanger?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just have one concern, and that is that, you know, when I look at some of the sites, previously portions of that site were being considered for other utilization. This council has not yet talked about the development of the downtown or a downtown square. And if we, so for a certain extent, I think when we're piecemealing, when we're doing one thing at a time as opposed to having a better understanding of what we're doing in total, that we're going to create conflicts that are more challenging to handle or get the end result we want.
Well, I think the purpose of today is that we're looking at all available sites and finding the best location for an arena and a library.
Right,
So-
I understand that, but what I'm saying is one of the public sites is putting a library where we were formally going to look at something else and may look at that in the future, but we don't know because we haven't gotten there yet.
And that would be part of our discussions today. Okay, anything else at this point? Councillor Wells?
Doug is here, so I guess just a question, if I may, through you to Doug, and I don't need him to formally come to the table, but the parking issue for the library is a big issue because of the square footage, therefore equals certain amount of parking, et cetera, and that's out of our zoning bylaw, if I'm understanding correctly. But when I look at a library, in terms of parking, if I could use an example, it's based on full occupancy in a sense. It's really saying because you have this many square feet, you therefore have this room for this number of people, therefore you need this many parking spaces in order to handle all of those people. But my sense is, and there's a huge traffic through the library, I acknowledge that, but my sense is, in some senses, it's somewhat similar to a doctor's office or a dentist's office. Not all of those people, except on maybe a very rare occasion, are all there at the same time. It's more of a come and go and a fluid kind of occupancy. So I guess for me, I'm asking, are the requirements for the parking carved in stone based on strictly the square footage, or is there recognition that not all of those spaces are probably ever likely going to be required at the same time? And therefore, should the parking side of it as part of the planning, and I'm not using that in any way to question any of these proposed sites, but are we trying to base a decision on a concept that in reality has some, for want of a better word, some flaw to it? That the parking issue may very well be addressed with much less parking because of that fluidity.
And it may
I don't know whether I
determine
expressed that well or not, but I think Doug's nodding like he understood me.
Yeah, it also may depend on what aspects council chooses to put in that. So
Totally
I don't know if you
understood.
can answer that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and through you, Madam Chair. The black and white answer in the zoning bylaw is that for a library, the parking requirement is one parking stall for every 18 square meters of floor area. And the idea is that it is based on occupancy, so how many people would be in the building and typical usage of people per car. But it is a flat calculation of parking requirement. So in terms of Councillor Wells' explanation, there's a fluidity to the use over the course of the day. And oftentimes what happens is the bylaw does have these requirements in it, and the current bylaw for everywhere except the downtown is 18, one stall for every 18 square meters. But in experience, what we find is that users, developers coming forward, will have their own calculation of use, and oftentimes it's based on the size of the property, so the highest and best use of the property, or sometimes it's based on what they actually know their numbers tell them they need. Retail is very good at that. In those instances, the town often and regularly considers committee of adjustment requests to adjust that parking requirement for the site, and that could be the case here. The caveat is in the downtown, there is a very site-specific zone, and that zone would allow for shared use of parking, depending on the time of day. So there could be some accommodation already built into the downtown zoning bylaw to allow some fluidity of use depending on time of day. And it also allows for and understands that there would be on-street parking in a core area, which would provide for extra parking that might not be available on a site. So I think the simple answer is yes, there is a flat requirement in the typical zoning bylaw, but it's often the case where through the planning process we look at site-specific situations.
Okay, any other questions at this point? Okay, thank you, Pam. We will invite Chris back to the table for the Twin Pad Arena.
Good afternoon, everyone. I trust everyone has had an opportunity to see my report, and I will suggest that it is reasonable to discuss the 3 town-owned properties before we go in camera, only to give some merit to what the community definitely does know we are considering. Beyond that, I might invite if there are any questions regarding the general information that's in my report first.
So the public sites are listed in the report. If there's any discussion on those now. Questions of Chris? Councillor Foster?
And I guess, I think it's self-evident, but the item number 2 there, the Wasaga Stars Arena, there's a note in there somewhere, the construction period could be very disruptive to recreational programming through the. So if it was to be considered a spot, the arena would have to be closed for, like literally we would have to go without an arena for a year or 2, is that correct?
Through your worship, no. I would guesstimate that our approach, it would have to evolve as construction evolved in case something came up. There's always surprises.
Yeah.
But I think the idea would be to fully construct the second pad.
Yeah.
And then go into our existing envelope once we had the first building completely up and running. I'm not an engineer and the building's not designed at this time, so that's a difficult idea to estimate, but certainly adding on to a building, there's going to be power shutdowns at certain periods, hopefully not long enough to melt the ice, but these kind of things would need to be planned out.
There's a difference between a power shutdown or taking it out of action for a week as opposed to us not having a rink for a year or 2. That would be, non-negotiable.
Right, and that would be my concern, and quite frankly, I would even have a concern trying to build sort of a half building and then putting an addition, basically an addition onto it. If we're going to do a new build, it needs to be a new build and not be meshed together somehow along the way. I was always with the understanding that if we went on this site, that it would be, we would lose ice time and that we would have to perhaps help minor hockey purchase elsewhere and those types of things. So I think we need to be very sure that if this was the site, how that would work before we would ever fully commit to that. Councillor Belanger?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just on some of the public owned sites, and I've stated this before, we are a community that does have a tourist industry, and we do not currently have a weather dependable venue to allow our tourist guests to enjoy a concert or other types of events at certain times. So if we're going to spend this kind of money on an infrastructure, if there's an opportunity for a synergy to take care of the needs of our residents first, but to secondly be able to further support and build our tourist industry, then I believe that should be a strong consideration.
Any other comments? Councillor Wells?
Just with respect to the existing arena site, Chris, has there been investigation at this stage, and I know we're preliminary, but maybe in the recent past, investigation of the suitability from a geophysical point of view to building on that site? Because I know that the existing parking, which would be to the side of the existing arena, much of that land that appears and is encapsulated with your picture here. Down the right-hand side, that blue line coming down the right-hand side, and then back to the arena. Much of that land is actually, I don't know whether I have the technical term for it, but it's backfill. It is truckload after truckload after truckload of soils and concrete blocks and whatever that were dumped in there year after year after year, and that area was built up. So I guess, do we know, or is it an added cost that we're going to have to look at if this site is considered appropriate to do the Kevin can give me the right word as soon as he gets off his phone, the geotechnical stability of that land on which to build something of this nature? Probably the easiest answer is we don't know at this point.
I can comment. You'll need that for any site in terms of the geotechnical and the conditions of the ground beneath the footings and the piles. So that will be a requirement for any of the sites.
Okay. I am correct, though, if maybe George or Kevin, I'm correct that a lot of that land was backfill created?
I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, did you have that answer?
Yes, through your worship, I do understand that the building was built primarily on a level surface because of the earth that was, or sand, that was dug out for the driveway. So we all know this natural rise, and they graded that driveway in such a way and then leveled the upper surface. I do know that. But beyond that, I can't speak to the quality of the fill and how it was designed on the back half. And this is why I've limited a parcel owned by the town upwards of 20 acres, but the dune forest area also does not score very well if we have to go into environmental assessment on that property.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Worship. Chris just touched on it, but I was going to say the 7 acres shown, we actually own 21 or 22 acres there. And so we have a much bigger footprint that we could be dealing with. If we have to, and we have other developments in town that have gone into these areas where it's been a little more rolling topography and that, so it certainly can be done. So I think we're limiting ourselves by just looking at 7 acres of 21 here. We have a lot more to work with.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? Okay. Thank you, Chris. So we will move in camera. It is moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Belanger. Be it resolved that pursuant to Section 239(2)(c) and (k) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, the next portion of the Committee of the Whole meeting of March 7, 2019 be closed to the public to discuss a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board.
Thank you, Worship. Call for the vote. Councillor Belanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor?
Councillor Kinney?
In favor?
Councillor Watson?
In favor?
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Mayor Bartholdi?
In favor?
Vote is carried on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, so we will move in camera for this portion of the discussion. moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Kinney. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole confirm direction provided to the Director of Recreation, Events and Facilities in closed session pertaining to instructions to be applied with lands to the event. This was dealing with the motorcycle event.
Call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Mayor Bartolci?
In favor?
Carried on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Bray, seconded by Councillor Foster. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole confirm direction provided to the Director of Library Services in closed session pertaining to property matters.
We'll call the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Mayor Bartolci?
In favor?
Carried on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
It's moved by Councillor Foster, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bray. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole confirm direction provided to the Director of Recreation, Events and Facilities in closed session pertaining to property matters.
Call for the vote. Councillor
In
Boulanger?
favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
And Mayor Bartolci?
In favor?
Carried on a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
And it's moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Wells. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole receive the update report on the 2019 motorcycle rally, and further that Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the town continue to support the event organizer in his efforts to find a purchaser for the event.
We'll call for the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor?
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Mayor Bartolci?
In favor?
Carried on a vote of 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, and then next we're going to discuss the library locations that are on public property and whether council wants staff to bring back further information on them. So similar to how we did it in camera, we'll look at 120 Glenwood Drive and whether we want more information on that and keep it in for now or out.
Show of hands out.
So we can do a show of hands just if we want it out. Okay, so 120 Glenwood is out. So the next one is 128, 138, 140 Main Street plus 27 Nancy Street. Show of hands if you want it out. Is there any questions? Councillor Kinney?
My only question would be, as it's outlaid here, it would meet, I don't want to say minimum, but minimum requirements for us to establish a library.
I think I'd like the time to do some more evaluating of it.
So it'd be good to keep it in, that gives you more time.
Okay. Councillor Wells?
No, I haven't changed my, Glenwood, I don't, are we talking Glenwood?
No,
Well,
Glenwood
Glenwood's out.
has already been
That's what I thought,
removed.
okay, sorry, no, I want to, I still think 140 Main should be considered.
Okay, Councillor Boulanger?
Yeah, I would just say that other properties under consideration have adjacencies in the area, so it's still
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll leave this one in for now.
I'm not privately owned adjacent, so could be from part,
Is that it for the public ones? Okay.
it's only two.
So can we add those in and then I'm going to read that motion again. Yeah, we're just adding the public ones onto that motion. So that would be public site number 2 for the staff report.
No, we didn't.
So that motion is moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Boulanger. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole receive the update on the library location report from the Director of Library Services for information, and further the Council give direction to staff to further evaluate and develop financial models and short list of locations, private and publicly owned sites, with the public sites being 128, 138, 140 Main Street, and 27 Nancy Street.
Call the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bright? In favor. Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kenny?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor.
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Mayor Bartolomei? In favor. Carried with a vote of 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
That slide is a private site up there.
Well, that's what I thought we
Should we not be killing that slide up there?
Oh, probably. Well,
No,
was it not?
this is town.
No.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So now we'll move to the arena sites that were being looked at that are town owned. So Lions Court and Ramblewood. Is that out, I'll ask? Okay, so that stays in. There's still 4 people supporting it staying in for now. Wasaga Stars Arena. Who would like that out? Okay, that one's out. And Sports Park. Just one wants it out. Okay, so Sports Park stays in for now. Sorry.
I wanted to clarify one question that came up a number of times, and I thought it was important that everyone understand. I gestured to the costs involved in servicing with a number of 1.6 million, but my sentence wasn't perfectly clear in the sense that the additional cost to build an arena in this area would be $1.6 million more. The other half of that sentence, where I spoke about accelerating projects looping the water main from Klondike around to Veterans Way, as well as the geotechnical road improvements, there is a cost that would have to happen sooner rather than later, and it is $7.3 million. And I didn't mention that in my brief description of some of the pluses and minuses. There would be obviously an opportunity cost of borrowing that money to advance the road and the water main.
Thank you for clarifying that. I was the one who asked the question, because I knew it was more than 1.6. George?
I just wanted to mention, just to piggyback on that, is that those additional projects are in the 10-year capital forecast. They're already there. They would just have to be accelerated to make this happen.
Right. Okay, Councillor Kenny?
Just a quick question. I'm for getting shovels in the ground next year. Could all that happen before next year?
And I'm thinking that, I don't know if Kevin can answer that, or if that's something that we can ask for that. I don't want to rush an answer, so if that can be something that comes forward, if we leave it in, then we can get that information. Kevin?
I don't have all the answers, but in terms of the infrastructure, right now, this year, we do have the road improvements slated at the intersection of Klondike and Veterans Way. We also have the horizontal and vertical alignment improvements, the geometric improvements for that diagonal, the 45, in this year. The challenge is we're still trying to, we'll say, negotiate with the Infrastructure Ontario and the province to allow the works to advance under a work permit in lieu of outright acquisition. So that is in this year's budget. Now, the water main component in terms of the looping, we do have provisions to extend the water main from Fernbrook. Can I stand here? I like to point up things. So we do have so the road improvements is effectively this diagonal as well as the intersection here. Fernbrook, when we do the road works along here, we are going to extend the water main concurrently with that work, and it'll terminate here. There's no provision for water main extension at this intersection at this time, so we would have to advance. The design is effectively already done for the water main. We'd have to advance some approvals, but that's fairly quick. It's a matter of just extending Shaw is where the water main terminates, and then tie it in. So does this infrastructure have to be in place before they start building? No, but obviously you want to have those services available for when it's going to be operational. There is a small water system on site. It certainly couldn't accommodate any future expansion, and we still need to look at the there's a small sewage pump station on site that services these facilities. There is an existing 3-inch force main that does extend up through to an outlet at Fernbrook. We need to confirm if we could maintain that force main if it's large enough for ultimate build out, but we would need a new pump station as well.
Okay. And I
So
think
I don't know if that answers your question or gives you more questions, but
I think it shows
Sure.
how many things we need to consider with this site, and it's not just that. There would be, you know, what other studies and stuff, and I think we should be looking at that with all sites. Is, you know, conservation authority requirements and things like that. You know, not to say that it couldn't happen, but we would have to be, and you won't have all the answers of what would need to be engaged to satisfy them. But I think that we need to be aware that there are certain things that could hold up a project as well. So myself, just because it's called our sports park, I'd like to see it left in so that we can have all those details and make an educated decision. Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess, Kevin, by doing those things, what does that bring to the table for the town? If those, besides putting an arena component on there, by doing that, does that open up some other development lands? I know we own the 100 acres or whatever beside it. Does it do anything more for us than just loop the system and provide for an arena?
So the water main looping is critical for full build out, as you mentioned, long-term planning for the community. So that is absolutely necessary. Will it facilitate some development in the area? I don't believe there is much property zoned along that corridor, and I would look to planning. So yeah, we do own the adjacent farmland, but I don't know what that is zoned here. And there are some private properties within some of the flood zones over near the river. So I don't know how much development potential there is post servicing works.
And I think that should be something that should be in a report. Like, we need to know that to justify what we're doing. Councillor Wells?
Yeah, just to confirm, Kevin, what I hear you saying though is that those works down from Fernbrook could be done in parallel in sympathy with any development of an arena complex there, such that it would not in fact delay the opportunity to build on that site. They could be being done simultaneously, such that if that was the site chosen for the arena, those works would not delay or cause that arena to have to sit for 2 years for anything to happen. It would all happen simultaneously.
It can, and then we can structure contracts to advance the water main portion in advance of the road reconstruction. There's different strategies you can use in the contracts to try and align the building design and
I'm just confirming that in my own mind, I just wanted to confirm that if I heard you correctly, it would not cause any delay to being able to develop on that piece of property.
I don't think so, if you can align again the design and
But we do need some approvals from M&R.
yes, the
for
planning
properties as
approvals
well,
I
too.
would certainly
Yeah.
defer to the planning department. I hate to speak on behalf of
No,
Mr.
go
Hare.
ahead.
If I could borrow
I don't want to deal with all the issues today. I think we've established there's lots. I just think that it would be worthwhile bringing back to make sure we get all of this, so.
Very quickly then, the question about zoning. So all of the wooded lands, including the sports park and up into the dune system, it's all designated and zoned open space. What we learned last summer with, there was a proposal for, getting this to work, but just below the site that's shown for the proposed arena, there was a proposal for a weekend concert event. So there was some discussion, and what we learned is just to the west of that site, it is environmentally significant. The FEC is saying it's a wetland. So on the very high level, if we were to move into developments further to the west of that site, there would be discussions about provincial policy in wetland and heritage lands. We don't know the extent of it at this point, though.
All right.
But not on that site.
No, the only thing that we're aware of on that site proper is that the NVCA has identified that there is a meander belt. So over geologic time, the river can develop oxbows. We really don't know how far that goes. There would be a requirement for a geotechnical study that was geomorphologist.
I can never say that word.
Yeah, don't ask me twice, I won't get it. But the NVCA, in their mapping, it identifies a good portion of the park site as being subject to that meander belt. But really, until the study is done, we really don't know how much of that site would be affected.
And because the property down here is lower, like the water usually goes out the other side, not towards the sports park, so it could be 1,000 years before it ever happens.
Yeah, but I want to see that.
You want to see it? Well, good luck to you. Councillor Boulanger?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And not to cover all the issues, but in previous conversations, we talked about natural gas, which is significant. I believe if it's for public infrastructure, that's on us as well.
Definitely staff did evaluate the ability for us to get private utilities beyond the servicing, and there would have to be a formal understanding of what the cost would be without gas, although the refrigeration plant does create a significant amount of heat, and it probably wouldn't be too critical for us to run with electric only in that one building. It's not ideal for any building, but we could potentially survive without gas.
And I guess from my standpoint, I just look at this as a town-owned sports park. We're going through this process. To knock it off now without maybe getting some of these answers to know in the future, if it's not for the arena now, what would be required if we want to, be it a dome, be it whatever. I just can't see not taking the opportunity now to understand the pros and cons to the site. So, but I will ask, who wants it out? Okay, so we'll leave it in for now. Okay. Okay, so did you add those in?
Yes, there were 2 public sites that are going to continue to the next phase, and that would be the property at Lions Court in Ramblewood and the sports park property.
Okay.
And they've been added to the motion.
Vote. Thought we took lines out.
No.
Yeah.
Did the one up? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
All right, it's moved by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Boulanger. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole receive the update on the Twin Pad location report from the Director of Recreation Events and Facilities for information. And further, the Council give direction to staff to further evaluate and develop financial models on a short list of locations, both private and publicly owned sites, with the public sites being the property at Lions Court at Ramblewood and the sports park property.
Call the vote. Councillor Boulanger?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Bray?
In favor.
Councillor Foster?
In favor.
Councillor Kinney?
In favor.
Councillor Watson?
In favor?
Councillor Wells?
In favor.
Mayor Bartolci?
In favor?
Carried and voted 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. And we are adjourned. Oh,
Sorry.
what did I forget?
Well, I just wanted to just summarize, so there were 13 sites for the library that were considered overall, and 7 of those 13 are moving forward for a more detailed evaluation. There were 12 potential arena sites considered, and 6 of 12 are moving forward for further evaluation. So just kind of summarize the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Now we're adjourned.
Are we off air? Are we off air?
Yes.